Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another PhD student advice video. Today we're going to be talking about 3 common mistakes I've seen in terms of writing your thesis and how we can actually counteract them. If you're new to the channel, my name is Aamir Hussain. I'm a person who loves to talk about research, so much so I decided to make YouTube videos about it. And if you are interested in staying tuned to more advice tips, more research videos, do click the subscribe button down below. Smash that notification bell if you want to stay tuned, and you shall not be disappointed, I hope. So in terms of thesis writing, we all are maybe doing thesis writing right now. We are on our way towards it, whether we in undergraduate, master's, PhD, maybe we're even postdocs and we've got some other reports to write. The notion of some form of research writing can cause anxiety because we hit that writer's block, we struggle about what to write, and when I've looked at being a supervisor now for the past few years, even my own experience when I was doing my PhD, I realized there were commonalities in the common mistakes I found myself doing, and also my peers and my colleagues, and even now my students. So I thought, why not share some of those common mistakes in the hope that maybe you might identify that you're doing it, but also to notice how can we counteract it so we can be more efficient and effective in doing our writing. So number one is all about linking vocabulary and how we can often find ourselves having a limited range or not an exhaustive list that we can use from the top of our head to make our writing more flowy, if that's a word, more creative, and to help it flow a lot better from start to finish, from chapter to chapter, page to page. Now to help this make sense a little bit more, when I was doing my PhD and writing my thesis, supervisors saw that I was using the word however a lot. Now, this linking vocabulary is associated with affirming a point, emphasizing a point, contrasting a point, linking sentences together, points together. So it's those words in between that are very key. And with a lot of people who are writing their thesis, colleagues that I had, the thing that I commonly found was a lack of this vocabulary. So words were being repeated from sentences to sentences without realizing. On the other hand, however, also, but, in addition to, furthermore, and then a lot of these were repeated because maybe the person did not know about other variations of linking vocabularies. So it got to the point when I was writing my thesis that the word however was used so much so it was embarrassing that I look back now and say, wow, I use the word however a lot. However, bad pun intended. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this linking vocabulary. So I might be talking about data, looking at my thesis now, even though it's just a blank screen. I'll be like, so this data is quite remarkable because it was interesting to see that drug A showed a marked difference to drug B. However, it was seen that drug B had some pharmacokinetic differences. However, you can already see, I wouldn't use 2 howevers, but you can see it's quite repetitive. So you can see on the screen there are 4 words, and these 4 words are linked to different categories of linking vocabulary. Now in this, we've got an emphasis, we've got addition, contrast, we've got order, and I actually made an Instagram post recently about different examples associated with these categories. So if you're interested to use them, feel free, link is in the video description down below, and you can check it out, save it. It also is a nice segue to say, if you aren't following me on Instagram, you can do. Over here is aamir.phd. That's my username if you are new, because I do post a lot of research content which you might find useful. So this was a common mistake that I found in writing a thesis, is not using enough variation of linking vocabularies. So now that you know about definitions, now that you know about, okay, these are variations, you can incorporate it into your thesis writing and you'll see your work will flow a lot better. Mistake number 2 is not paying enough attention to the pre-planning before you actually write your thesis. One of the main reasons why it only took me around about 3 months to write my thesis is because I spent a lot of time planning the chapters, planning within the chapters, planning where the graph is going to go, where I'm going to raise these points, which points am I going to contrast, how am I going to bring this or that in, how am I going to talk about X, Y, and Z. So much so that I made so many bullet points, all I had to do essentially was expand the bullet points. And when I did, it made writing a lot more easier. So the arduous task of trying to write pages and pages became less so, because those pages and pages were already structured about, in this area I'm going to talk about this, in this area I'm going to talk about this. So you can see on the screen now, and this is an example of a pre-planning for one of my chapters in my PhD. Now you can see you've got the bullet points, you've got this is where the graph's going to be, this is where I'm going to talk about this. I've even added links to the papers I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to explain, okay, this is where this data is going to go, then I'm going to talk about this data. So just literally jotting down notes, not exhaustively writing everything, I'm just writing down notes. And the more I did this throughout my entire chapters, throughout the entire thesis, when it came to actually writing, it was actually a lot more simple. Okay, everything was already structured out. All I was doing was just expanding things. So it's like I didn't really write, I just expanded the bullet points that were already there. And this is something I preach about a lot on Instagram, and my other videos related to writing is don't look at it as write one chapter and then finish write the other. Look at it as building houses. Look at it as actually you're building houses, build up chapter by chapter, build up in terms of structure to each bit. And if you get bored of one because you hit writer's block, move to the other chapter. You'll have ideas. And really, believe it or not, in a few weeks' time, you'll actually have a nice structure to each of your chapters. So spending more time planning your thesis, from the headings to where everything's going to go, spending more emphasis on that makes the actual writing part a lot easier. And you find yourself less focused on, I'm struggling, I can't even get there, I can't even push this together. That's where this can help. So giving more emphasis to the pre-planning stage is going to be very important in maximizing the effectiveness of your writing window or when you are writing. So now mistake number 3 is actually related to number 2 in some parts, where we find ourselves often looking at the micro within the chapter. For let's say, for example, a paragraph and 2 sentences within that chapter. We spend, sometimes hours and hours trying to reframe that. Whereas if you look at it as a macro element, your thesis is quite long. You can have many, many chapters. So it doesn't seem very time important to focus on those 2 lines, where you can probably use that time to make inroads somewhere else. And when you come back to it the next day or the next week, you might look at it in a different way and something might trigger. Trying to force the flow quite often with writing doesn't really help. Maybe a minute population who can force their creativeness in, and then you can drill hours and hours of writing. But for the majority of us, we find it difficult to say, I'm going to write 500 words a day, and then you realize that the next day you have to delete 450 words from the day before because you were forcing yourself to write it and didn't actually come out very well. So to avoid that forcing issue, what I found myself is if I got stuck on part of a chapter, for example, if I was writing something and something was hitting me, I'll spend a finite amount of time, and if I can't get there, I'm finding myself, being more anxious and forcing it, I would leave it there, make a note, and maybe look at some other chapters that I have and see if I can make inroads, see if I can expand some bullet points there, see if I can look at something else. And overall, I'm actually making progress. So when I finish that day, I can say, on one hand, I can look at it and say, do you know what, I didn't make progress on chapter 3. Or I can look at it and say, I had issue with chapter 3, but I actually made some more sentences and paragraphs in chapter 5. Because when you get to that stage, you know your PhD inside out. You know where everything is or where everything should go. So look at overall progress in terms of your thesis, not just, right, I'm stuck on chapter 3 or I'm stuck on one chapter. And that can actually help in terms of your long-term progress for your thesis. So guys, those are the 3 little tips I wanted to share with you in terms of common mistakes when associated with thesis writing. I do hope you find these useful. If you do, let me know in the comment section below, or let me know on my Instagram page at Aamir.phd. For those who are also new, I recently launched a newsletter called ResearchTribe, where I share a lot of these tips in a bit more detail and things I may not be able to share on Instagram or on YouTube because it might be too wordy or too elongated. So if you are interested in staying tuned to more free research tips and advice, link is in the video description down below. Do check it out because it'll be important for me, it'll be helpful for me, for your support on there, as well as on YouTube, as well as on Instagram. But in any case, I shall leave you to it, and I shall see you in the next one. Take care.